With us on our studio line and returning to the show, Mercedes Kirkle. Mercedes is an award-winning author of Mary Magdalene Beckons Join the River of Love. Also Sublime Union, A Woman's Sexual Odyssey, guided by Mary Magdalene. And yet another book in process and forthcoming in the Magdalene teachings. Mercedes, perhaps foremost, is a channel for Mary Magdalene and a spiritual teacher who brings to humanity messages and guidance from beings of light and lessons for our evolution. Of note, and particularly now, Mercedes and Mary speak to the awakening of the sacred feminine and sacred masculine in a new conscious partnership. These teachings invite us to all step up and awaken into unconditional love, sacred sexuality, emotional mastery, and self-knowing. And if you want to know who you are and why you are here, right now, at this most extraordinary of times, we do invite you to listen up to our conversations that will follow, as Mercedes and I will be bringing you poignant future content. And for today, specifically, being our Easter Sunday TRM special and always looking to be out of the box a little bit in an extraordinary way, we asked Mercedes and Mary Magdalene if they would speak to the real meaning of resurrection and ascension and anything else that's relevant to Yeshua, Jesus, the Christ, and his consort, Mary Magdalene. So with all that, Mercedes, always nice to have you back on the air. It's been a while. I've had the two books in front of me, and whatever Easter stands for, a happy one.
Thank you, and thank you for having me back on the show. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so there's the question, and maybe you would explain briefly to our listeners how it works and how Mary's going to come through you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the question that you posed relative to what Mary would like to say and offer us about this time, Easter, resurrection, the Ascension Process, and her orientation to that, her understanding and the meaning of it. So I'm posing that to her and going to bring forth her message, channeling right here on the show. Shall we begin?
Yes, let's begin. And like I said, we'll be looking for breaks here, folks, but right now I'm going to relax, and if there's any questions I have, I guess I can ask them too.
Definitely.
Okay.
So now I am calling in and inviting Mary Magdalene to come forth and communicate through me. Greetings and blessings to all who are listening now and will be listening in the future. I am honored to be invited in to speak and communicate with all of you. And this is Mary Magdalene. And this is a time when many people are tuned in to the one that many know as Christ, as Jesus, and who I refer to as Yeshua. And also to me, because I had my role in the Easter story. And I would like to talk about the meaning of the resurrection, which is what is celebrated at this time, at least in the Christian tradition. There is a great deal that could be said about this. And I want to begin with explaining that when Yeshua was alive and was teaching, there were two different ways that he was teaching and working with people. One was a more public, outer way, and there was also an inner school and an inner teaching, which was mostly secret, shared amongst those who were involved, but not necessarily revealed or talked about outside of that circle. And there was a reason for this. He wanted to bring a general teaching that would be accessible to many people at that time and could help the largest body of people move forward into their next phase, their next level of spiritual growth. And the essence of that teaching was about love. He was teaching about love of God first and foremost, and within that, love of self and love of all beings. And this was the message that was made in many different forms publicly, and it's what is recorded primarily in the Bible and what has been passed down through what became Christianity and the church teaching. And a part of what became Christianity was not necessarily what Yeshua was speaking or teaching at the time, but rather what others added on to his teaching. And in some ways the resurrection was a part of that, the way that it was interpreted. You see, within his inner teaching, what he was primarily teaching about was moving into what I refer to as the fourth dimension, the next level of consciousness and the next dimension of reality that is founded on that consciousness. And I have talked about what the fourth dimension is in the messages that I gave and that are recorded in the first book, in Mary Magdalene Beckons. So you can find a full description in those messages, but to summarize, the fourth dimension is an energy-based dimension. It is the beginning of a more energetically based reality. It still has a physical component to it, but the physical component is much lighter, and the energy component is more predominating. In that dimension, one of the abilities, well, you wouldn't even call it an ability, it's just a feature of the dimension, is that people are much more appearing in their light bodies, in their energy bodies. And so in the inner work, in the inner school, inner circle that Yeshua was teaching to the initiates, this was the beginning of what he was teaching, was how to transition, how to move into this next level of consciousness and reality. And a part of that teaching was to move into one's energy body. At that time, this was a very largely unknown practice. There were mystery schools that understood this and that taught this. And in fact, you could say that what his inner circle work was a mystery school. At this time now, this is becoming much more known. People are much more in touch with this other level of reality and consciousness. For example, many people are familiar with out-of-body experiences where they go into their energy body. There are many reports of people having what you often call near-death experiences, where again they transition out of their physical body and are in their energy body. And this is starting to become more widespread as an understanding and a possibility for many people. But at that time, this wasn't widespread. It was quite contained to a very small group of people. And had it been more publicly described, it is likely that those involved were putting themselves at risk, perhaps would be killed. And in fact, Yeshua was placed in that position for many reasons. And so what you call the resurrection in the teaching that grew up around Christianity, we would not give it that term. We would give it something more like what people today are calling it, which is the Ascension Process. It's the process of ascending into this subtler dimension. And part of that is appearing in one's energy body, which doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't necessarily require that one die in order to do that. Just as you can have an out-of-body experience and come back to your body, you can have a near-death experience and come back to your body. And truly, in those experiences, you have passed into a subtler dimension and are doing so in your energy body. This is what occurred with Yeshua at the time of the crucifixion. And also before that, but it wasn't publicly done before that. But he actually chose at the time of the crucifixion to show himself in a more public way at that time. And there was a reason for this as part of his outer teaching. Because at that time, there were many teachings in various cultures and various religions, spiritual paths that involved a death and a rebirth process. And many are aware of this, that this is a theme through many of the older religions. And part of what was desired and expected in many ways among the general populace was that Yeshua would fulfill this path if he was indeed speaking the word of God, if he was bringing the message of God, that this would be a sign. And it was something that had been prophesied. And so his choosing to do this at that time was his way of, again, opening more people to the teaching that he was bringing forth in his outer work, and also giving a glimpse of what the inner work was, the inner temple.
Let's do this, Mary and Mercedes. That's a great beginning here. And I'm going to take a break and then come back and continue the conversation. So we shall return. Mercedes Merkel on the line with us, and Mary Magdalene speaking through her, with her, and we shall return.